Hi, everybody. I'm Matt Epstein. I'm president of Sherman Homeowners Association. Welcome to our meeting. We do have Councilmember Nithya Raman, who is our guest speaker tonight. The topic is going to be on the homelessness issue. And we're excited to hear what she's doing, what's going on. And then we've got a lot of questions from folks that have been sending their questions in, as well as I'm sure we'll get some questions from the audience as well. This is about midterm for her. So she was about 2 years ago, and I'm looking forward to that. Housekeeping to do first before we get into our guest speaker. We just want to have an introduction of our board members, and I want to start with our Vice President, Bob Anderson.
Hi, I'm Bob Anderson. I'm Vice President and Chair of the Transportation Committee.
Come on, you guys, we rehearse this all the time. Jules, and then
Jules. You're
okay.
muted, Jules.
We're skipping Jules. Let's go on to Tom Glick.
Hi, Tom Glick, board member, chair of the Land Use Committee.
Hi, I'm John Eisen.
Co-chair with Marshall, excuse me.
I'm John Eisen. I'm treasurer of the association.
Maria Pavlou-Calvin. I chair the legislative committee.
Hi, I'm Nancy Segoyan. I am the membership chair. I want to welcome everyone. If you're not a SOHA member, please join. We're nonprofit. We do a lot of great work in the community for you, and we need your support. You can go to soha914.com and click on Join SOHA and join online. Or if you have questions, you can email me at joinsoha@gmail.com. So please join us. We need and appreciate your support. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Jay Weitzler. I am treasurer. Excuse me, I am secretary of the organization. I'm going to take John's position. I'm secretary of the organization, the LIAs, and also the liaison to both the Buckley School and the Hillside Federation.
Okay. Marshall, did you want to say hello?
Sure. Hi, Marshall Long. I'm co-chair with Tom of the Land Use Committee.
Okay. And then Jules, you want to unmute yourself and say hello?
Yes, I'm unmuted. Hi, I'm Jules Fear. I'm involved with community relations.
Okay, great. And he's also the honorary mayor of Sherman Oaks.
Thank you.
This is our board of directors, and we all work hard to make sure Sherman Oaks is kept in the great city that it is, to the community that it is. So we do not have either of the senior lead officers on the phone on this Zoom call right now, which is a little unusual, but I'm sure that they are out there fighting crime for us and keeping our crime stats down low. So we will get the update from them on next time. We do have Andy Solomon on the line here, who's up next. He is our neighborhood prosecutor for the city attorney's office. Andy, what do you have for us?
Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. My name is Andy Solomon. I'm the neighborhood prosecutor, meaning I handle all the chronic issues or the issues that are difficult to handle, and I do my best to fix them. Many of you have been connected to me through your SOHA members. If you don't have my email address, I'll give it to you at the end of this, but also just feel free to reach out to any of the board members. They know how to reach me as well. Something I've been working on with Ryan Ahari from Council District 4. We've been kind of going up and down the boulevard, looking at some properties that need some maintenance and some attention from LADBS and from whatever other agencies need to take a look at what's going on. So not to steal your thunder, Ryan, but that's something we've been working on for the past couple of weeks. We do have meetings coming up throughout this week and next week regarding those items. So that's a project on the forefront of my mind right now. To reach me, Andy.Solomon, SOLIMAN @lacity.org, or again through any of your board members here. They always reach out to me and connect me with you guys. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Did you have anything to do with cleaning up all the graffiti mess on Woodman and Ventura?
I can't take credit for that. It might be the 311 people reporting through 311, or we'd have to give credit to CD4, although I don't know.
All right, well, whoever, maybe Ryan can take credit for it, even if we'll see.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andy. So next at bat is, and I'm sorry I did not get her name, but it's the representative filling in for Steve tonight for Assemblymember Adrin Nazarian's office. Can you introduce yourself? I didn't get your name. Okay, then. Okay, is she still on the phone, Bob? No.
Supposedly, Matt.
Okay, well, let's go on to Ryan for his field report.
Thank you, Matt. Hi, everyone. Ryan Ahari, Sherman Oaks Field Deputy for Councilmember Nithya Raman in the 4th Council District in Los Angeles. Like Andy said, he and I are working on addressing nuisance and abandoned properties in Sherman Oaks. So if anyone spots them, please let us know so that they can use some of our attention. I wanted to let everyone know that our office was happy to work with Congressman Brad Sherman's office to get those really stubborn weeds removed from the large post office on Magnolia. So if you haven't taken a look at it recently, please do. It looks significantly better. Our Cd4 is hosting a homelessness clothing drive at the Woodman entrance of Notre Dame. Saturday, July 9th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. We are accepting new or lightly used men's clothing like t-shirts, jackets, even things like backpacks, sunglasses, belts. And we're also looking for new hygiene products. So please, if you can donate, please do. Just two more things. The Cd4 is co-sponsoring the Neighborhood Council's annual summer movie series. So the next viewing will be next Saturday, June 25th, which is going to be a viewing of Encanto. And there will be pre-show entertainment at 6 p.m. and the movie will start at 8 p.m. And then finally, Councilmember Raman is looking forward to participate in a long overdue Sherman Oaks Chamber State of Sherman Oaks. So this is going to be on July 7th from 11:30 to 1:30, where she'll be joining her colleagues from different levels of government. And this is going to be at the Horace Heights Estates. So that's my update. Thank you, everyone. If you do need to contact me, please email me, ryan.ahari@lacity.org, or you can call or text 213-424-2412 in case our office can help with any 311 requests or anything else. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ryan. Okay, Maria, we have a couple chair committee reports. So we have
and Eliza came back on, Matt. There was a glitch in there. I can connect her from Nazarian's office.
That would be great. Thank you, Eliza, sorry.
Hi there. It's actually Elisa.
Elisa.
So many derivations of the name. Totally okay. Okay, so this should take me about 2 minutes to read through everything that the Assembly member and the 46th District would like everybody to know. So regarding the freeways, so expediting service with Caltrans. The Assembly member is working with Caltrans to establish a regional prioritization system for encampments and other freeway-related issues in the San Fernando Valley with a hope of improving response times. Okay. We know Caltrans is a major issue, and I just want to interrupt even myself and say I am easily reachable. I will make sure my email is in the chat, and everything that happens on Caltrans is a state issue, and you can reach out to our office. Our district director, Steve Ferguson, is the person who you will speak to regarding all Caltrans issues. So as far as the Clean California initiative through the California Department of Transportation, it's a freeway spending plan that will bring roughly $5 million in freeway improvements to the 46th Assembly District, thanks to Assemblymember Nazarian. This initiative will fund freeway landscaping as well as new hardscaping, improved fencing from chain link in some areas to wrought iron. We expect construction on freeway improvements to begin December of 2023. And then also there is a new initiative called Community Coffees with the Assembly member. So the Assembly member will be conducting community and constituent coffees throughout the summer. If you would like to host a community coffee, please reach out to me. And again, I will put my email in the chat and I can connect you with more information about that program. And in terms of legislative announcements, our office is thrilled to see that the governor allocated $2 billion in funding in the May revised to the state budget for Assemblymember Nazarian's Cal Kids program. The Cal Kids program provides free 529 college and career training investment accounts to all children born in California after July 1, 2020. The state will provide an initial investment of $25 to get the fund started, and for low-income Californians, the state will, as of 2022, begin investing up to $1,500 a year in these accounts. At this funding level, the Cal Kids program is now the largest college saving program in the world and will ensure thousands of future California students have the funds available to pursue college or career and technical training. Hope that didn't all go too fast. Anybody have any questions? You can always reach out to me. Also, anything with EDD, unemployment, disability, we are your go-to. So,
Great, thank you.
my report.
Maria, do you want to, she's our legislative chair.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so here's my Sacramento news. There are two bills moving through the state legislature that we oppose. They take away minimum parking requirements. That means take away parking for any new commercial or residential projects that are half-mile from transit. These types of bills always assume people can walk to their homes or place of business, no matter their age, young or old, their health, no matter what time of day or night, and whether they're carrying packages or equipment. We feel these bills are inequitable. You can't take away parking without offering good alternatives for people to get to their destination. So we will continue fighting these bills. Locally, we are studying the housing element. The housing element is required by the state. The planning department must draw up maps showing how the city of LA will accommodate 450,000 new units of housing in 8 years. So while studying the maps, we noticed that many residential areas of Sherman Oaks are targeted for more density, while underutilized commercial zones are not. We also noticed many parts of the city are less impacted than Sherman Oaks. So we are a part of a committee working on these maps and trying to find an equitable solution that locates the housing we must plan for while not impacting our existing residential zones. So we hope to present our findings personally to Councilmember Raman in the next couple of weeks. So the next time we meet, sometime in August, we hope to have news updates about these issues, hopefully good news. So that's it for me, Matt.
Great, thank you, Maria. Bob, you want to talk to everybody about what's happening on the 405?
Thanks, Matt. Sure. Everyone, you all probably haven't heard much recently about the Sepulveda Transit Corridor Project, the mass transit from the valley to the west side. Metro has 2 teams of contractors working on it, and they are doing quite a bit. Unfortunately, Metro doesn't tell anybody what they're doing. And it's quite difficult to learn what's going on. But the good news is that Metro is holding a public scoping meeting where they will discuss the results of all the comments that people submitted and maybe other things. We don't know too much about the meeting. The meeting is tomorrow night, Thursday night, from 6 to 8. It's a Zoom meeting, so you can join in just like you joined this one. If you want the link at 8 o'clock tonight, you will get an email blast from SOHA. So before this meeting ends, you'll have a blast in your email box that gives you the link to join that meeting. I'm going to attend and listen. There's a chance for questions and answers at the end of the meeting. I doubt Metro will ask me to ask any questions because I've asked so many. So if you want to ask a question, a couple of good ones are, which of the concepts they're looking at are actually affordable with the budget that Metro has? I'll give you a hint. Only 2 of them are, and they happen to be monorails. We'll see if Metro will answer that question if one of our members might ask it. You might also ask how long it's going to take to build these various concepts, because the monorail concepts can be built in about 4 years, and the subway concepts are going to take anywhere from 8 to 12 years. So it's quite a difference, and Metro doesn't happen to mention that very often. Our one concern, just so you know, is that Metro tends to study a lot of things, most of which are unaffordable. And then in the end, they end up having to be forced into picking the cheapest concept, and they don't even have enough money to build that. And that's happening in Van Nuys on the what is called the East San Fernando Valley Transit Corridor. And it's happening down in the Santa Ana area for a very important line through some very, very poorly served, underserved, low-income communities, where Metro has completely finished the design. And lo and behold, they find out it's going to cost $12 to $15 billion to build it, and they only have 4. And that's a little strange. You know, if I was looking for a house and I was told I qualify for $1 million mortgage, I wouldn't be out looking for a $3 million house, but that's the way Metro works. So you might find it interesting to ask a few questions and see what they have to say about that. But you'll get the email blast. We'd appreciate you all to attend and listen. I think it'll be worth your while. Thanks a lot.
Great, thank you, Bob. So we are now at the time where we'll get to hear from our council member as far as what's been happening and what's going forward. I think we're all very, very interested in hearing what's happening. Homelessness issue is probably front and center for 99% of the people I speak to as far as the number one issue, because obviously it also deals with crime and a huge resource drain on our community. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm sure a lot of other people are. I want to also, before we get into this, I just wanted to, I'll go into that later. We have our chair of the homeless committee, Larry Slade, he's going to be our master of ceremony tonight. We didn't know what to call him. He's not our moderator, but he's a great guy. He's chairing our homelessness committee. And he will be asking the questions that have been submitted by folks prior to this meeting. And then if you do have questions, once the council member has started, you can do the questions, and if we have time, we'll get to those. So, council member, if you want to, the stage is yours, and I will mute myself. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you so much, Matt, for allowing me the opportunity to come here. Matt and I met for lunch a few weeks ago, actually not that long ago. And I said that I would love to come and talk to SOHA about what we're doing on homelessness in the district, to give you all an insight into what's been happening, but also to learn from people, what are your most pressing questions right now? And how can we as an office both help answer those questions, but also address those challenges as we move forward. I wanted to correct Matt from earlier, which is that I haven't actually been here for 2 years. I've only been here for 1.5 years. And so we have another 2.5 years left in this term. But I'm really proud of the progress that we've made so far on this issue in our district. And before I get into what we've done, I wanted to just step back and provide a little bit of context into what the system looked like and continues to look like, frankly, when we entered it. So one thing I want to talk about is the broader homeless services system that operates in Los Angeles County. This is a big system. I'm sure you've all heard about LAHSA, Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. This is a joint powers authority that's set up by both the city and the county and serves both of those entities to address homelessness through a variety of things. LAHSA provides both outreach services for people who are experiencing homelessness and handles a lot of the contracting. So any funds that are coming either from the city or from the county or from the federal government for interim housing, for service providers of all kinds, all of that funding is routed through LAHSA as the agency through which homeless services are provided to everybody in Los Angeles. Now, from the perspective of a resident of the city of Los Angeles, or from the perspective of a council member here in the city of Los Angeles, or a resident of a particular council district, the way in which this is organized presents some very unique challenges. We don't have, as a council district, a council district is not an entity or a jurisdictional kind of boundary within LAHSA. And so when we ask LAHSA or other players in the homeless services system questions, or when we ask for outcomes or other questions that can lead us to accountability on these issues, often what happens is that because agencies are so fragmented across county divisions, now, you know, counties are separated into both two kinds of things, supervisorial districts and SPAs, which are called service planning areas. The council district that we're in, Council District 4, is split between two different service planning areas in the county. It's SPA 4 and SPA 2, right? And already, just from what I've been saying, you can have a sense of how confusing this system is, how fragmented this system is. So from the perspective of a resident of the city of Los Angeles, or from the perspective of a council member here in the city of Los Angeles, when I look out at this system, it's often very hard to understand, how are we making progress within it? How are these, in this kind of fragmented set of services, serving our council district? More specifically, how are they serving the residents of one particular encampment? Because often that's what we care about, is the residents of one particular encampment. How are we addressing the issue in my neighborhood? How are we addressing the issue down my block? That's what we want to get answers to. But because of the way that the system is set up, combined with privacy concerns, it is often very, very hard to get answers or to secure a lot of accountability within this system. So that's one piece of the context in which I entered. I always, when I was running for office, I looked at the system and I interacted with it as a volunteer. And I think when I was looking at it as a volunteer, a neighborhood leader, I was on my neighborhood council in Silver Lake. I helped found a big volunteer homeless services nonprofit that's still operating in Silver Lake and Los Feliz and many parts of the district. When I looked at this system from the perspective of a volunteer, I thought if I were in office, I could squeeze more accountability out of this system. And I could supplement the services that exist in this kind of fragmented space so that we could have a better way to address the needs of our own council district. And I thought, if my elected representative was working a little harder to do that, if they had staff in their office who were charged with doing that, if they knew what resources were missing and were trying to allocate and find those resources for our district, and not just for our district, for people experiencing homelessness on our block, that we would have better outcomes in our district. And so that is what, when I got into office, that's exactly what I set out to do. So I'll talk about the system that we put into place in our office in a little bit, but I also wanted to talk about one other thing, which is the context in which we are operating here in Los Angeles, which is that more than ever before, this has always been somewhat the case, but more than ever before, in part because of the Judge Carter case. I don't know if you've been following that case, which is a lawsuit filed against the city of Los Angeles and the county of Los Angeles for their failure on homelessness, which has been adjudicated by Judge Carter, who has adjudicated famously a case down in Orange County around homelessness and is now adjudicating this one. Thanks to the way in which that case has been adjudicated, and thanks to pushes within our council, our existing, the way that the council is thinking about this issue right now, so much more of how we respond to homelessness has fallen to individual council districts. Okay, so we have this fragmented system, right, in which it's very, very hard to understand what's happening. And yet much of the responsibility for responding to homelessness is now driven by the individual responses of a council district. Now, this doesn't mean I as a council member set the policies around homelessness in LA. We do that as a council, right? But in terms of what resources you have available to you here in Council District 4 to respond to homelessness, that's my job to put together. And that's our collective job as residents of this council district to push for more of those resources, because frankly, the more of those resources that we have, the more we're able to take on in terms of addressing homelessness. So those are the two pieces of the context that I wanted to share with you, which I think is really important to understand. And so into this context, I took office and really started my work in January of last year. So it's been about a year and a half. And what we've done since I've come into office is show that if we make the thesis that I ran on, which is that if you make investments in staff capacity to address homelessness, and you bring additional resources to the district in terms of outreach, capacity, and beds, whatever kind of beds there are, you know, shelter beds, non-congregate shelter beds, motel rooms, hotel rooms, whatever it is. If you can add these two things to your district, that you can see results. And if you're persistent and focused, you can see results. So since I, since I took office, basically my office and I have together helped over 250 people move off of the streets into interim housing. So in the shape of our current council district, which obviously was changed during the most recent redistricting process, we have something like 600 to 700 people who were unsheltered, unhoused people in this council district. So we have managed to get about 250 of them into interim housing. And of those 250, we have managed to get about 135 of those individuals moved into permanent housing from those interim housing options. And we're working on the remaining who have been moved into interim housing. So this is a significant portion of those people who were unsheltered, unhoused people in our district. That doesn't mean that our numbers are going to go down by that much, because that doesn't account for inflow, right? So that doesn't account for the number of people who are going to be newly homeless, which in years past in Los Angeles, when we've had the homeless count, has been higher than the number of people who have been helped indoors. But still, this is a significant number of people who have been helped indoors through our work. We staffed up on homelessness. Why did we staff up? We staffed up on homelessness because I realized that really when you have a system that's this fragmented, you need people in your office who are focused on making that system legible and work for you, right? You have to be willing to talk to every single nonprofit service provider who's already serving your district. You have to be able to interact with departments in the city who are dealing with these issues, like the Department of Sanitation or LAPD. You have to be able to coordinate between all of these in order to see results. And if you bring new resources online, like new outreach teams, new mental health beds, whatever it is, you have to also be able to coordinate between all of those as well. So in order to do that, you need staff capacity. Nothing happens at the city unless you work on it. And you all know that, I think, even better than me. You've been working on making change in the city for years. And so we have actually now have a 5-person homelessness team in our office. It's the largest of any office in City Hall. Until very recently, it was 5 more than any office in City Hall. Full-time people who are really addressing the issue of homelessness, which, as Matt said, is the top issue in LA right now. These 5 individuals are doing a variety of things, but many of them are on the streets every day, doing that connective tissue work, coordinating with departments and making sure that this system works better. And I want to just share a little bit more detail about those wins. We had more than 80 people in our district move into interim housing between February and March, thanks to coordinated efforts between all of these different outreach teams, including in 3 big encampments in the Valley, which were at Fruitland and Ventura, at Van Nuys 101 under the underpass, and at the Coldwater 101 underpass, all of which were very successful operations. We have a Hollywood team where we raised additional funding from the city for an encampment to home operation, which is we've partnered with the People Concern on for the Cahuenga underpass. And we have now moved 40 individuals from that encampment indoors at that underpass, a huge number of people. And now we're working on making sure that they're moving from interim housing into permanent housing. We recently received, and we were the only local office to get it in Los Angeles, a $1.7 million grant from Governor Newsom to fund an encampment to home project, basically moving people from encampments into housing that will work along the LA River We are, as I said, we're the only people that got that in LA, which is very, very exciting. We applied for that from our office, and those are new resources that we're able to bring online. And that's going to help a total of 60 people move indoors in an area of the city where it's incredibly tough to bring resources because of the terrain, because of how hard it is to navigate that area. When we were doing the research to put together the grant application, when we went out to the river and talked to people, we realized that data for people along that river was from a year ago. That's the last time that people were out there on the river, right? So you think, oh, the river, there's a lot of homelessness there. There must be outreach teams there all the time. No. And that's what this grant is going to change that. And the grant is also going to leverage existing volunteer partnerships and support, I think, a process which is going to help us make the river look significantly different from the way that it does now. And we have also pushed for and received support from the city to have a new Project Home Key site in our district. So these are new beds that are going to be coming in, which is going to be 72 new permanent supportive housing beds in CD4, which will help us move people from interim housing into permanent housing, basically building that system. After I came on board, we called hotels and motels. We realized there was still federal money available for interim housing through FEMA, through Project Room Key. We called motel and hotel owners across the district. We were incredibly persistent, and we brought a new Project Room Key site on board. We were the only office to bring a new Room Key site on last year, and that added another 72 beds, and it really helped us make significant progress. Without beds, you can't make progress on addressing homelessness. That is like the math of the whole system. And it takes persistent and it takes work to bring those beds online, and we've been able to do it for our district. We also have launched a Cd4 Ventura Team. So that's among this 5 people, there are 2 people who have been really focused on addressing homelessness along Ventura Boulevard. Here's the thing about homelessness. Depending on where you are in the district, it can look really different. In Hollywood, homelessness looks really different from what it looks like along Ventura Boulevard. It looks really different along the river. In some places, it's large encampments. Often in the Hollywood, Los Feliz area, it can be larger encampments, although we don't really have those large encampments in our district anymore. But in the past, in Hollywood, it has looked like very large encampments, large numbers of people. Along Ventura Boulevard, it's often individuals who've been living alone, who have been often living out on the streets for a very long time. They're not in big encampments, they're by themselves. And that requires a different kind of work. And that Ventura team has now responded to 37 calls from business owners there, including 22 in Sherman Oaks, with an average response time of less than 30 minutes. And we've been working with individuals to help them get indoors and to address the needs of some of these individuals. Again, because they're at their individuals and not at encampments, they're not getting that outreach support from this very fragmented system. So every single place that my office is seeing a gap in how we address this issue, we bring new resources online to address it. We also are bringing on new beds with the Tarzana Treatment Center, which will help us get shelter options specifically for substance use. It turns out there's not enough substance use beds out there. There's not enough dollars for that. So when we see people who are struggling with substance use, who are on the streets, we have nothing to offer them. Except sometimes they go to jail, but then they come right back out. They're still struggling on the streets. That's not a long-term solution. And I know that. And that's why we're really keen on bringing these new beds online. I think one of the things that we've found, and I know that there'll be questions about this later, and I know Larry, you and I talked yesterday, and I know that you're going to be talking about this, so I'm not going to talk about this too much right now. But I did want to say that mental health issues have been a huge struggle. So here's one more piece. I said there was only 2 pieces of the context that I wanted to talk about. Here's the 3rd piece of the context I should have talked about right up front, but I'm talking about it now. The 3rd piece of the context is that we depend on the county for mental health services. The city of Los Angeles does not have access to its own mental health agency. It does not have access to its own substance abuse resources. All of this is run through the county. And we have really, really struggled with getting the amount of mental health support that we need to be able to address mental health issues among people experiencing homelessness. Now, I want to be very clear up top. Not everyone who is experiencing homelessness has a mental health issue, but often the people who have mental health issues are the most visible among our unhoused population. They are the ones that people see the most. They may be ones who have challenges with hoarding, and so you see large collections of items. Whatever be the case, the people who are experiencing homelessness who also have mental health challenges, I think this looms large in residents' minds when they're thinking about homelessness as a problem. And for us as a council office, it is a big challenge because we don't at the city really have the resources to do it. All of these teams that I talked about before, none of them really have the capacity to deal with people who have severe mental illness. That takes real behavioral health workers and behavioral health training. That takes the support of the Department of Mental Health. And we have found it incredibly difficult to get the kind of support that we need from our Department of Mental Health. That was another reason why I asked to speak with all of you tonight, because I know this area is undergoing an election for a new supervisor. And I want to make sure as you're going into the supervisorial race that you're asking your supervisorial candidates about these mental health issues and asking them how they plan to improve the quality of mental health care for people who are experiencing homelessness here in the city of Los Angeles. So we have this Department of Mental Health is a $3 billion agency. The vast majority of that $3 billion, oh, I'm sorry, do you hear my kids crying in the background? Is that very loud? Apologies.
We can't hear it. It's
okay. Hold on one second. Okay, hopefully that should be a little better. DMH is a $3 billion agency. The vast majority of that $3 billion, the services through that, which is serving about 250,000 residents. Is that right? I want to make sure I'm getting that right. Annually, about 250,000 county residents are being served by the Department of Mental Health every year. But the thing is, much of that service is being provided in clinical settings. It's not street-based mental health services, right? So you have this massive agency that's providing support for people, but it's really not doing enough to provide mental health services for the people who are experiencing homelessness on our city streets. So just to put this into context for you, we have the primary way in which our Department of Mental Health serves people who are experiencing homelessness is through something called a home team, okay? And these teams are staffed with trained mental health workers who are supposed to be doing proactive outreach and responding to calls related to homelessness. Here in the county, as I said earlier, there are these service planning areas. They have assigned, the Department of Mental Health has assigned one home team per spa. So that means in spa 4, which is the Los Feliz, Hollywood Hills, a part of the Hollywood Hills, and Silver Lake part of the district, spa 4, which has also includes many other council districts and has 15,000 or so homeless people, that's being served by one home team, one. And the same is true for every other spa, right? So this is one team of like 3 or 4 people who are supposed to be serving, in some cases, thousands of people in a district to understand what their mental health needs are and to make sure that they're providing them. Even if these were superhumans, this is nowhere near enough, nowhere near enough. And I think every supervisorial candidate, as they're going through this process, needs to be asked exactly how they plan to reform the system so that we have access to more of those resources here in the city of LA. Once again, not everyone who's experiencing homelessness is going to need those services, but there is a need for it. And we need to be advocating for it. Otherwise, we're just not going to get it. We're not going to see changes in accountability from the county. And I have been advocating for it, but I certainly can't do that advocacy alone. We have in our district tried, as we've done with every other issue, where we've seen the need for more outreach teams, we've added them. Where we've seen the need for more shelter beds, we've added them. Where we've seen the need for more resources in terms of dollars, we've added them. For mental health services, we've also tried to do that. Last year, we added we got a multidisciplinary team allocated to our district, one, and we're fighting for one more this year, which will hopefully serve more of the valley, but it's not enough. And it certainly doesn't have the capacity or training that the DMH home teams have. I also wanted to talk about one other issue or one other thing that we've brought to our services here in our district, which is that we work with both the Department of Sanitation on cleaning, because I think a big part of working with people who are experiencing homelessness is also making sure that our streets stay hygienic and clean, even as we're working to move people into housing. We have also contracted with 2 additional LA Conservation Corps teams who work closely with our homelessness team and our field staff. So they don't just do homelessness related cleanings, they do everything. But to make sure that we are dealing with some of the externalities of having people living on our streets that impact other people who are also trying to use them. And we have a wonderful team from LACC of young people who are out there every single day and work closely with every single person on our team. I want to just say that I just driving around this district, walking around this district, I see differences. I see change from what I saw when I first came in. I see encampments that had been there for many, many years, and I had seen for many, many years that are no longer there. I am not saying that we can, declare success and move on, far from it. But I do want to say that the thesis that I ran on, which is that if for someone were in office who was energetic, who was focused, and who was really, really dedicated to bringing resources online for our district to help our people, that we could see change. And that's exactly what we've seen in this district in this last year and a half. We have a lot more work to do, and I'm really eager to do it. But I do also want to just share with you some of the very real challenges that we have as we try and deal with the county and with other jurisdictional entities on some of these issues, and to invite you to advocate with me for the changes that we need in order to make our city as wonderful as I know it can be. I love this city very, very much, but it needs some help. So with that, I want to throw it over to Larry for follow-ups.
Great, thank you. Larry?
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me? Okay, great. First of all, I want to introduce myself briefly. My name is Larry Slade. I live in Sherman Oaks. I have for the last 26 years. I was involved with the neighborhood council many years ago. My kids have graduated college and are moving on, so I'm starting to get more back involved in the community. And it's a privilege and a pleasure to be chairing the housing committee and to be here with the council member and everyone from SOHA tonight. So thank you. And before I get into the questions, and we have quite a few of them, I just want to echo some of the sentiments that the council member stated about the dedication of resources to the homelessness issue. Over the last 2 or 3 months, I've been working with the council office and the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association to learn more about what the council member and her staff are doing. And I can tell you that they are actively engaged in trying to address the issue. They have dedicated significant resources and staff to trying to address and mitigate the problem. And so I think to a large extent, we're all rowing in the same direction, and I'm very pleased about that. Our first question comes tonight from board member Jay Weitzler, and I'll turn over the floor to Jay to ask his question.
Good evening, Councilman, Councilperson, excuse me, Councilwoman. I don't know what to call you. I want to thank you for your.
Call me anything.
I want to thank you for your eloquent presentation, and I appreciate, as do all of us, the time and the effort and the knowledge that you spent, the knowledge that you have in the area. It's clear that homelessness is #1 issue for you, and certainly we appreciate that. And here comes the however. I have so many questions, but I'll kind of limit it. I've talked to an awful lot of people, my neighbors and people in the community that are certainly understand what you're doing and how you're trying to solve the problem, although they share your frustration and want to know why after, in your case, 2 years on the council and another
Year and a half.
council.
Year and a half.
Okay, a year and a half. And other council people have been there, of course, much longer. You can sit here tonight and say, it's fragmented. We've got this count, you know, we got this and that and the other thing. Everybody's working at cross purposes and nothing ever seems to be to change. If you want to address it, that's fine. But that's part of my larger question, which is some of the individual things that you and other council people have done. In this case, I'll limit it to you. You were one of 2 people to vote against restricting encampments or tents within 500 feet of schools. Now, we certainly get the idea that just picking somebody up in front of a school is no different in terms of getting them housing than any other place. And there's, you know, it's not going to solve the problem. However, if your children or grandchildren have to walk past these encampments or tents where people are defecating in public, which I would be arrested for, urinating in the bushes, which I would be arrested for, and generally creating a disturbance in the area, it seemed to me and to others to kind of be a slam dunk. That's one where you have to vote to limit the places where homeless can live. So people are saying, we love with what our council person is doing, but trying to address housing, but she's representing the homeless. She's not representing us, the people that voted her into office. And I think that's a real problem that people see. Who is she representing? The homeless or the citizens in the neighborhood? So I understand you probably recognize that issue, and you were one of the 2 council people to vote against that particular thing. So I'd kind of like to have you address that conflict, if you will, because everybody thinks you're very learned in what you're doing about the homeless. That's not the issue. But who do you represent is the issue.
Well, you know, so I want to get back to the first thing that you were saying. Yeah, I think it is frustrating that that we still talk about the system being fragmented after people have been here for a decade or more in City Hall. It's really frustrating. That's why I feel like we're doing the work to say, what are the systemic fixes? That's why I'm out here telling you about the system that's broken and saying I'm advocating for change. I want more from my Department of Mental Health. It absolutely deserves more accountability, but the only way that we get that accountability is if all of us are asking for it. And if we are electing people who are committed to that same level of accountability that I put on the system. Regarding this particular vote, you know, I think one thing that I really hate is I don't like lying to constituents. I hated it when my elected officials lied to me, and I don't really want to do that when I'm in office. So to pass a law that says we're going to ban encampments in front of every single school, wasn't just every school, by the way, it was every school and every daycare. So that is literally thousands of locations across the entire city that are going to have a 500-foot ban on encampments. We already have tons of laws around banning encampments in Los Angeles, including encampment bans in parks, encampment bans within 10 feet of driveways. We have no capacity with the limited resources that we have. And I know we sound, you know, we have a lot of resources that are going towards homelessness, but it's not enough because of how bad homelessness has been allowed to get, not by me. I've only been here a year and a half, as I keep reminding everybody, but by everyone else who has been here for a very long time and has allowed homelessness to rise so precipitously here in Los Angeles, okay? In this system, when you have limited resources and you have very, very dire situations, real risks for people, like for example, we were very quick, for example, to address an encampment that was in a hilly area that was near a lot of brush that could have caused a fire. This is a place where you need to rush resources to make sure that you're not having a fire that's going to impact hundreds of people and burn homes down, right? That's a priority location for me. When you have limited resources to enforce these kinds of rules and to get people indoors, what you need to be doing is prioritizing which locations you're going to address. Saying we're going to address homelessness in front of thousands of daycares is not a prioritization. That's just a promise you can't keep to constituents. If we had instead talked to people and said, what are our priority locations? Where do we most need to be addressing homelessness? And let's put our limited resources towards addressing them in a thoughtful and prioritized way, then we can actually do something about the challenge. That's what, that's what we need to be doing in order to do this work. I also want to say that we already, so this was thousands of locations that we've been adding, right? That we just added through this new ordinance. We already voted on a version of 4118, which is the law to which this was adding. And we have, I think there's about 100 locations that are being cited for this exact sort of ban, 500-foot radius encampment ban for these 4118 locations in the earlier version of the law, before we added schools and daycares. And we have a year's worth of results for how that encampment ban so far has worked for these 100 or so locations. And a recent LA Times article that looked at all these locations and my own evidence driving around the city looking at these locations has shown that we are not able to address homelessness even at these 100 locations. So what are we doing? Writing a check that the constituents possibly cannot cash. It just does not make any sense to me. I want my council people to be real with me. I want them to feel as strongly as I do that we can end homelessness in Los Angeles, that we can get to a position where we can address this issue, that we can get people indoors. And by the way, getting people indoors doesn't just help homelessness for the people who are living on the streets, it helps homelessness for everyone. It is the top issue in Los Angeles. So when we're having success getting people indoors over and over again, by dedicating resources to it, I want to create policy that helps us do that across the entire city in a reasonable, realistic way. Okay. And then make a promise that we can actually keep to our constituents. That's the kind of policy I want to be making. That's the kind of policy we make in our district through our operations. We've seen the impact of what we've done here in our own district, where we've seen encampments that existed for many years that no longer exist. Tents have come down, stuff has gone into storage, individuals have moved indoors, and the sidewalks stay clear, not because we have a law, but because we've done the real work and we've dedicated the real resources to getting it done. That to me, thank you, is what really good policy making on this issue looks like. That's what I want to be doing. And by the way, that doesn't mean my constituents are only unhoused people. That means I'm serving all of you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you for that response. Our next question comes from Bill Wolf, and it's regarding how businesses can help solve homelessness. And Bill writes, I've lived in Sherman Oaks, just a few blocks from Ventura Boulevard for the past 45 years. In the last year, it's been difficult to walk down Ventura Boulevard without stepping over a homeless person. Last week, on a short walk to the bank, I came across 2 exposed homeless people within a few minutes. My wife will not walk on Ventura Boulevard. I'm on the board of the Community Foundation of the Valleys and participated in the initiative to help homeless. I've toured more than 10 transitory housing projects in the Valley so I can better understand. One of our initiatives is to get the business community involved in solving the problem. Do you have any suggestions on how we can get the business community more involved? And what role do you think our community foundation should play to solve the homelessness crisis?
So I think for us, the biggest challenge in making progress on homelessness in our district is finding both interim and long-term housing. We have in Los Angeles historically underproduced on these issues for a very, very long time. And I just want to, since I'm trying to make this as, I want to give people a little bit more of a sense of a context when we're looking at these questions and answering them. I want to also make sure that I'm providing the context on this issue. For many, many years here in LA, we had huge numbers of people who were experiencing homelessness. When I worked at the CAO in 2014, there were like 23,000 people experiencing homelessness in the city of LA. Now there's 41,000, right? But the difference between then and now is that at that time, most of the people who were experiencing homelessness lived in just a couple neighborhoods. They lived in Skid Row and they lived in Hollywood and they lived at the beaches, and that's it. They did not live in Sherman Oaks. They didn't live in other areas. And so it wasn't as big of an issue as it was right now for the majority of people who voted in local elections. And so there was no urgency among elected representatives to actually address the issue with the only thing that really works to help people indoors, which is housing. Shelter, whether it's congregate shelter, whether it's non-congregate shelter, whether it's permanent supportive housing, whatever it is, we just didn't build it. We have far less than the number of units or the number of beds that we need here in LA. And any single time that I'm able to make progress on homelessness in my district, it's because we brought new beds online. And that can take a lot of different forms, but that's really the thing. And so for me, when I'm talking to the business community about homelessness, what I want to say is, let's work together on finding new beds. And let's work together on, do you have properties? Do people have properties that they think could be used for interim shelter sites or for, tiny homes? Do they have motels or hotels that they have access to that are being sold that we can purchase through Home Key or Room Key? Any of these opportunities are opportunities that we can work with the business community on. The second thing that I think is really important to work with the business community on is on building support for more resources like these to come into neighborhoods. Like, one of the reasons why it's historically been very hard to rapidly increase shelter and housing is because of pushback from neighborhoods. And we need more voices who are out there saying, oh yeah, when you bring more shelter online, you see results on the streets. And so when there is a proposal to bring shelter online, we need the business community and business leaders who want to see their streets look different to come forward and to say, I support this. And, here's what I want out of this project. And I want to come forward and support it, and to build an understanding among a lot of people here in Los Angeles that if we can, if we can bring those beds online, if we can bring those shelter units online, that we can actually make significantly more progress on homelessness than we have been.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Lisa Seidman, and it's about affordable housing being torn down to build luxury housing. On Fulton Avenue between Valley Heart and Riverside, 3 apartment buildings that consisted of affordable units were demolished to make way for luxury apartments. Of the 3, 1 building was built and is rented for as high as $5,000 a month per unit. The other 2 saw their tenants evicted, the buildings demolished, and the lots sitting for 2 years. Why is affordable housing demolished for luxury apartments with 2 lots remaining vacant? And how can we support any action on affordable housing when affordable housing is being destroyed to be replaced by either luxury apartments or vacant lots?
That's a great question. So I'm going to talk about not that specific case, which unfortunately I don't have details on that particular case, although I'm happy, Lisa, to provide details once I look into it in the office. But I can talk more generally about the question that she's asking, which is, why are we letting affordable housing be torn down? We are working on that legislatively in the office to make sure that rent stabilized units, if they are being redeveloped, that new construction include those rents, include a number of units that the same number of units that were in those rent stabilized buildings beforehand, that those are included in the new construction along with an additional percentage of affordable housing. Basically, that existing RSO units, that replacement number is not included in the percentage of additional affordable housing that these buildings are being asked to construct through density bonus programs. But the reality is that construction of new buildings is really where our growth on affordable housing has come from over the last few years. We've actually seen more affordable units come online over the past few years than we have before. And that's because of density bonus programs like the TOC program. And that has brought additional units online. Where we have, and one of the reasons why existing apartment buildings are being targeted for redevelopment as higher structures by these processes is because I think it's very, very difficult to take single family homes, for example, and to convert them into apartments. I think you'd face significant community opposition. And so that's not something that people wouldn't necessarily want to see either. So this seems like a better option. If there's already multifamily there, you can demolish it and build higher potentially through these density bonus programs. But the hope is that we can make some legislative fixes that will ensure that all of the existing affordable housing remains on the site and that we're actually adding more, which I hope will address Lisa's concerns.
Okay, thank you. Next question comes from board member Nancy Segoyan. I'll turn the floor over to Nancy.
Hi, Nithya. Okay, so I have a related question, which is on affordable housing. You are aware, because we've had many discussions about it as a group, that SOHA has for years been advocating for affordable housing to be built in the ton of empty retail and commercial buildings. You know, the brick and mortar is not coming back in the internet age. And so these places are sitting vacant. They're gathering blight and not contributing, when these vacant sites can be easily transformed into affordable housing. And the key thing is they're on existing transit corridors. So this is perfect, especially for people who need affordable. They need the access to the easy transit. And I'm wondering, rather than, you know, supporting anything that destroys quality of life, which is so critical for families in single family neighborhoods, have you gotten to the point where you are embracing the fact that utilizing these vacant commercial areas is really something that resolved many issues, and at the same time, you know, preserves our neighborhoods?
Yeah, look, I think thinking about commercial boulevards, commercial spaces along boulevards as a place to locate new housing is very, very exciting to me. It's something that I've been talking about for a very, very long time, long before I even contemplated running for office. And so it continues to be very, very exciting to me. There's a couple different ways in which you can think about doing that. One is by rehabbing existing commercial buildings to make them into, you know, livable spaces that can either be permanent supportive housing, affordable housing, whatever you want to build on it. I've been looking into that, projects that have actually done that. There's very few of them, unfortunately, that have actually done these office housing conversions. And I've been trying to find out about the cost, because rehabbing old construction is very, very expensive, often prohibitively expensive, particularly when you're using public funds, and that comes with a whole bunch of issues related to ADA access and rules you have to follow for these things. And I've been looking into conversions of office spaces into housing that have happened. And sadly, the results of these is that these projects are very, very expensive. They don't really save you that much money. So it's not the quick fix. Rehabbing of existing office buildings is not the quick fix that we think it's going to be. It's not the cheap. And this is not even with public funding. This is privately funded, and privately underwritten project. And it's extremely expensive. That's one option. And I think that could be exciting. The second might be to think about, how do you take an existing building, that's say a 2-story building, raise it, and then build housing on that. That could be something that would be more exciting. And one of the reasons why Ryan has been working with our neighborhood prosecutor on graffiti and abandoned buildings is because we have been looking at some of these problem buildings for a long time. Some of them have been vacant even before I took office.
Exactly.
And one of the reasons why Ryan is out there looking at those buildings, trying to get in touch with those property owners, is to see where exactly we have those opportunities here in Sherman Oaks, because first step is to get them to clean the graffiti. We need their permission before we can do it. But the second is to say, hey, if you've let this be vacant for 4 years, what are your plans? And how can we as a community and a council office encourage you to do something with it that is way better than it's sitting vacant and accumulating graffiti?
And blight.
And blight, exactly.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a perfect segue into our next question from Charles Baker about the cost to build housing for the homeless. The city's building housing for the homeless in the Skid Row area of LA, and I believe it's approximately 40 units, he writes. The cost is $650,000 per unit, or $26 million in total, for approximately 40 units. Do you believe this is a wise expenditure of taxpayer money? And what is your approach to addressing this issue? And what's the cost per homeless person, just for the housing, not for services? Please talk about the cost to build housing for the homeless specifically, and respond if you know anything about this specific example. Thank you.
I don't know about this specific example in Skid Row. Unfortunately, there's so many new permanent supportive housing projects. I think it will be hard to know which one he's referencing, but yeah, the cost of new homeless housing is something that I think has been widely covered in the press. I think it is a problem for us in many, many ways. It is also built into this way in which we have decided to build that housing. So, you know, existing HHH project, a permanent supportive housing project here in the city of Los Angeles, requires the developer to get funding, not just from the city of Los Angeles, but to raise funding from the state, from the federal government, through the Affordable Housing Tax Credit Program. It is a long and painful process. And so once you get the land, you then have to sit on that land and go through the financing process, which can be sets of applications with all of these different government agencies, which, you know, if you not always the most straightforward to deal with government. And imagine now you're dealing with 6 different jurisdictions or 6 different government agencies to get that financing together. And that's mandated in the way that we set up HHH, that we weren't just able to fully fund a project, that we had to, that project, our city dollars had to leverage other dollars, which sounds great in theory, but in practice that results in huge amounts of time that your capital that you've invested in that land is literally just sitting there. And you know what happens when you sit on capital is that it becomes more and more expensive in order to build that housing. So our city's dollars are only a part of that $650K per unit in that house, in that building that he's talking about. But but you're right that it is an unacceptably large amount. How do we fix that? Okay, so that's, I think that's a really good question. Home Key was a potential opportunity to fix that. That was Governor Newsom made a bunch of money available to buy existing motels, hotels, and apartment buildings and potentially make some rehabs to make them into homeless housing. Now that it fixed one part of the problem, it was faster, significantly faster. You were able to buy an existing building and get it online much more quickly through Home Key. But guess what? It turns out even if you buy an existing building, one that's already built, the rehab that you need to do to it is so expensive that it doesn't actually become a lot cheaper.
All right, I want to interject because a logical follow-up to that question is the city, based on all these regulations and red tape, are they capable of building housing for the homeless at a reasonable cost? Because if your philosophy is that the way to cure the homeless problem is with beds have to go into structures. If we can't attain rehab or build the structures because of too much red tape, is it an impossible problem to solve?
I don't think so. We have made significant progress on this issue already. Like we've built more in recent times than we have in the past, and we're going to be getting a lot of new units online. But I think there's a number of other creative ways that we can address this problem. One is that there are companies that come with some criticisms, but there are many companies that are looking at different models for building this housing through private financing. So there was an article about one recently called, I'm forgetting the name, but it is now the largest Section 8 housing kind of provider in LA, and primarily buildings that are in South LA. And they have been building this housing and rehabbing existing housing at cheaper than the city can do it. So one way that in which you could do it is to say, we have this money, let's rely on the private sector to do this work and just contract out with them. So one thing that we're thinking about doing in our office is finding opportunities for exactly this, master leasing buildings that are already in place. So we bring the service dollars and we bring housing vouchers that bring a regular stream of revenue to that apartment owner. And that's coming from the private sector, and you can add units that way.
Great. I think we have time for one, maybe 2 more questions.
I can keep it briefer also.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. This is a question from Edgardo Quintanilla, and it's regarding our next mayor. And his question is, in April 2022, you announced on Twitter your support for Karen Bass as the next mayor of Los Angeles and the reasons you stated for why you supported her. If Mr. Caruso were elected mayor of Los Angeles, in what ways would you work with him in solving the problems of homelessness, police reform, and corruption in LA? And if you could just limit your answer to specifically the homelessness problem. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, I think you know, we work with, I work with everyone. I work with all my supervisor partners. I work with all my council colleagues effectively. I think whoever would be the mayor, I would be delighted to work with them. And actually, I had the opportunity to work with Rick Caruso when I still had the Grove as part of my district. And we talked about a couple of different issues related to the Grove, and I worked with him and his colleagues at his company to move projects forward. We've already demonstrated a capacity to work together effectively in the past, and I'm very, very confident that we can do that going forward. And on the issue of homelessness, I would do with him exactly what I hope that any mayor would be doing, which is I think really trying to advocate for systems change, for pushing back on this fragmentation that we've been talking about, Jay, and to work with the mayor to take charge, to really centralize, to think about how the city of Los Angeles needs to move forward in a holistic, all hands on deck way to address this issue, rather than leaving it to every council district to run in 15 different directions.
Okay, that's an important issue. Last question is from Leslie Elkin from the Sherman Oaks Business Improvement District, and this is regarding the Cd4 Ventura Boulevard team and their authority to act. Sherman Oaks businesses are suffering from increased numbers of the unhoused interfering with their operations and customers. On Ventura Boulevard, the unhoused are seen naked and relieving themselves in the bid, camping in storeway door fronts and parking lots, scrolling graffiti, etc. When the Cd4 Ventura Boulevard team is called, they can ask the print, and they show up, which I understand that they do fairly well, but not at all hours of the day and the week. They can ask the person if they want help, but when that person refuses help, the team's unable to force them to leave. Business owners and residents often complain that they don't feel safe walking on our sidewalks, and the concern has caused several businesses to decide not to renew their leases and leave Sherman Oaks. We lost TJ Maxx, Unitech Computer, and the 818 Hair Salon, who have all closed their doors in the bid because of these problems. Since the Ventura Boulevard team is not authorized to actually remove these disorderly houseless people, is there anything else you can offer to mitigate the problem for their businesses? And is anyone authorized to remove them?
Well, I do want to push back on the idea a little bit that people are leaving because of homelessness specifically. We have seen a widespread business closures because of the pandemic. There's been a retail and kind of storefront problem that we're facing across the entire city. Homelessness may be part of it, but my experience and my research across the district has not shown that homelessness is the primary driver of store closure in any way. It's really been about the pandemic, the reductions in people walking in and using that retail establishment. I have Hayes Davenport here, who's a senior advisor to our office, who works closely with our Ventura team. If Hayes, do you want to talk? Is it all right if he speaks to this issue?
Well, we should be wrapping up shortly.
Well, he can speak quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll go as quick as I can. I'm not on the Ventura team. I'm a senior advisor in the Cd4 office. I work on a lot of projects related to housing and homelessness. I have gone out on some calls with the team, and I understand the frustration of any business owner who's expecting a situation to be resolved when they call for help from the city, and that doesn't take place. We did, for example, we went out on a call today in Sherman Oaks, where there was an individual who was causing some issues with people in the area. We were able to speak to him, convince him to move on to a safer location where we could continue working with him. At the same time, sometimes that initial call, like when the Ventura team is called out, they'll potentially meet someone for the first time, maybe someone who's experiencing mental health issues. That call then can be the beginning of enlisting the Department of Mental Health, any other higher level team to come and help move the process along of getting that person into care, if that's what they need, which is sometimes the case, as you've seen for individuals on Ventura Boulevard who are by themselves. The kind of people, if they're causing disruptions in a business, tends to intersect a little more directly with a mental health issue. And so that call, while in the moment, yes, the Ventura team it's not a law enforcement entity. It's not, it just comes from our office. We're not dispensed to physically remove anyone, but it can be the beginning of a process, especially if someone is gravely disabled or is potentially going to injure someone else or themselves of moving that process along with other departments, which has happened in the past. We've encountered people through some of these call outs where people are concerned that I'm worried that this person that their life is seriously at risk. And that's one way we've been able to move the process forward.
And we've actually gotten people who have been living on the streets for a very, very long time, suffering from severe mental illness, who have been essentially left to themselves, left to their own devices for years. We've actually seen progress on those individuals in our time in office. But the issue is that with some of the individuals who are the challenge with people who are dealing with mental health issues, they are both in many ways the most challenging to reach, require the most time and effort to reach, and for whom we, thanks to a failure of resource allocation in the county, for whom we have the least resources to be able to address them. So we are trying, again, we are trying more than anyone else to put that together in our office, but we need more from the county. And I would ask for all of you to be demanding that from your supervisors. We receive all of the calls in our office, and we do so much to address homelessness because that is the way we serve all of our constituents. But we cannot do it alone, and we need your help in advocating for these changes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Larry,
Yes, sir.
are you done, or did you have another question?
No, I was, it's 8:33. I was going to wrap it up and turn the floor back over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Larry. You did a great job.
Great job, Larry.
Master ceremony tonight. Ask you one follow-up question. I was just scrolling through the questions that came through the Q&A tonight. There's a person, Tess Taylor, and you and I discussed this briefly at our lunch a couple of weeks ago. And again, I understand that there's that sometimes different states or the city's not talking, or the city's not working with the county's not working with the state, their state's not working with the feds. And that's a big part of the problem. But Tess Taylor asked a question or is making a comment and then asked a question that Supervisor Barger is working to update a 1965 Medicare policy.
Yeah.
And we talked about this briefly. Medicare policy limits mental health facilities to only 16 beds.
Yes.
And which is absolutely crazy to think that this is a policy that's in place since 1965.
Yes.
Okay, when I was So the question is, are you working with her to reform? And I know it's a Fed issue, but are you working? Okay, so why don't you?
So we are, I mean, the short answer is yes, I am working on it. I'm working on it through our federal representatives. It's something that we've talked about for sure. And again, I just want to put this into context. The reason why this law exists on the books is because there was a real pushback against those huge, terrifying mental health facilities that used to these, insane asylums or whatever they were, the mental image that we have of those that existed. And there was a real pushback in the entire country to decentralize those, to make sure that mental health care was being provided in spaces that were far more conducive to people actually getting the help that they needed, not just being institutionalized and medicated forever. And that was what the design of this initial kind of law is based around. So it had a good idea at its core, but now is preventing us from being able to, essentially provide mental health facilities at the scale that we need to. And so, yes, absolutely. Catherine Barger is actually, Karen Bass also talks about this a lot. And a number of other elected officials have talked about this. And I think we do need federal legal changes in order to be able to address this issue. I will say for me, if I may, just one last thing, the biggest issue that I'm facing is, let's say I have someone who's experiencing mental illness, and this is an example that I face every day, my team faces every single day in the district. If I have someone who needs help in the district and I call someone to come, no one comes. I don't have the training, I don't have the money, I don't have the resources to be able to address someone's needs who is experiencing mental illness. I'm trying to get LA County to send a home team, to send a PMRT, which is a rapid response team, not just for homeless people, it's for anyone. Nobody comes. And literally we have eked our way into individual relationships with home team members in our spas so that now they come. But if you were to call, if anyone were to call, they don't come. And so that to me is the transformative change that we can make right now. When you have people experiencing mental illness, what you need is repeated contact with them in order to move them along the path to services. We don't have a system which has that capacity at all right now. And the repercussions of that is what everyone is facing on the streets. And I will say a lot of the tone of some of these questions, I think, I want to just gently push back. We have made real progress in the district, and I'm very proud of that progress. And Matt, you mentioned this when we spoke, you know, that you had seen some of that progress, and I'm proud of that. And I know it's hard. It feels frustrating for people because progress is slow. But I want to tell you all that I'm here because I was as frustrated as all of you. I was never involved in politics, and the reason I ran was because I wanted to do this work. And we are making progress. It is slow. The systems are huge, but we are pushing and we're making change. And I hope that all of you will work with me to continue making that change.
Well, we are seeing change, and having an office with or having a council office with now 5 people that are dedicated, and you know, I appreciate it. I know our community appreciates it, and it's a start. It's definitely a big start. And you've also got, I believe, you have a phone number that if somebody in the community sees a homeless person, they can reach out directly to your office through a homeless crisis line. Correct?
It's just for businesses. Yeah.
Just for businesses.
Yeah,
Okay.
just for businesses, and it's just a pilot program. If it's something that we want to expand, we will come back to you and let you know.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Everybody else who's still on the call, we do have actually most of the folks that are still on. Thank you for coming. I do want to remind you all that July, we are dark, so we will not be having a Zoom meeting. However, in August, September, and November, very, very cool debates coming up. So we will keep you guys posted, but we have a county supervisor, we have a sheriff's office election, we have a city attorney, we have a city controller. So we've got some very, very important electeds coming on board, and those folks are going to be key to, and the mayor obviously, are going to be key to hopefully changing our city and getting the ship going the way it should be going again. So we'll see everybody on this meeting, and check your emails. There's a new email tonight on the Metro hearing that Bob had mentioned earlier. And again, thank you for your attendance.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Nithya.